Hello, this is part 3 of my little short series on some advice for helping you out with highlighting and taking notes to just make sure that you're setting yourself up with information that you can easily find later. This part is going to be dealing with how to more effectively take notes so that you don't have to do as much work to go back through and make sense out of it. For this, I do have some things linked down underneath the video, including the main document, the taking notes and highlighting. There's also a one that is labeled Principles of Communication Video Notes. That is tied to this video right here. Okay? So, and I'm also going to have the video that's on here in my notes and also right at the top of that linked in, but also I have that linked at the bottom of the video itself. First off, some general keys to success with highlighting. Don't write down everything. Your notes should be at most 10% of the original material, and that's probably too much. Also, another little side note, I usually make way too many notes during lectures. When it starts off going, I don't always know what's important. I'm just kind of running with the moment. That's okay. But what it ends up meaning is that I do have to go back through and redo those notes later. Now, I will also tell you, the more you practice with going back through and kind of honing down your notes and seeing what things to look for from, especially from specific teachers or specific professors, then you get better at getting it done right on the first try. So that's just, it's a skill set. The more you practice it, the more it gets down. But don't be afraid. Don't be worried if you have way too much and your notes are super messy and all that kind of stuff. Don't be afraid to go back through and reorganize your notes. First off, that's going to help you be able to find the information better later on when you need to. Second, the act of, again, going through those and either rewriting them, moving them around, whatever the case is, that physical activity of it, looking back through them, all of that, deciding what's important, that will help you recall the information better. That is part of learning. Even if you never use the notes again after having done those things, you're going to know the information better. Now, also, use any method of notation that works for you. Okay? I have a specific approach that works for me. That's what you're going to see with my notes on here. Don't feel the need to stick with that. There are all kinds of approaches to it. I do have a link that's a really good resource for different note-taking methods. Those are some general approaches. They're very helpful. They've been helpful to me in my life. And sometimes different approaches to taking notes might work better in different situations for you. So go with whatever approach is going. The important thing is that there's some kind of order, some way that you can easily find the information that you need. And that's going to be different from person to person on what order works for you. Third, I want to warn my people that are in college. If you're in, general education schools, this isn't as much of a problem, although it can sometimes occur. But college specifically has an issue where most professors are experts in their field, but do not have a background in how to teach. They have not learned educational theory. They have not learned how people learn. So they tend to teach just the way that they learn. And you just got to catch up. And just that's it. So they're not always the best at making it clear from the start what the main focus of the information is or on what information matters. It's a pain in the butt, but it is a thing that occurs. So just go into it knowing that you might have to write down a bunch of information and then try to make sense out of that information later. It happens. So what I'm going to suggest doing when you're taking notes is First off, write the information in your own words. Even if there is specific language or terminology you're expected to use, then fine. In those circumstances, write down the exact terminology that they want you to use, the exact language that they want you to use. But follow that with rephrasing it in terms you are more likely to easily understand. First off, it makes it easier to understand the stuff when you're looking at it later and you've forgotten what the stuff means. But second, that action is, again, something that helps you understand the material better. That's how brains work. So you're going to recall it better. You're actually going to need your notes less if you do things like rephrasing it, because that's connecting those neurons. It actually does like a lot of good. Next, you want to keep your notes as simple as possible. If you can, keep things reduced down to noun, verb, subject. Three sentence words. Yeah, that's it. 3-word sentences. If you can do that, do that. It's really helpful. Also, like I mentioned doing with the highlighting, color code your notes. That can be helpful to you. Use highlighters or different colored pens. They're your friends on it. Then, as long as you're using specific colors to mean specific things, just like with highlighting, that's going to help you out. You'll be able to go just to the specific kind of thing you're looking for. And so these pages and pages of notes that you've got just made it easier to scan through and find the thing you actually need to read in detail. And also, like I mentioned before, don't be afraid to rewrite your notes later to make them more useful. It's going to help you process the information. And that way you don't have to stress as much about what you're writing down during the reading or the lecture. I have anxiety issues. I used to stress about that all the time. I'd be so freaked out that I would end up missing information that mattered. Once I got down, like, oh, I can just fix this later. Then I just wrote down a bunch of stuff. And then later on, when I was more comfortable with what the actual focus was, then I could, redo it with that in mind. Yes, it's extra time. You'll be okay. So this is where, again, practice would come in handy. Sorry, I kind of skipped past what I was doing. I would like you to pause me here, go to this video, take down some notes, see what you come up with as far as your notes on what is important with it. This is a good practice opportunity. Pause me here, do that, come back to me sometime at your leisure after you have done so. Okay, so I'm assuming that either you're just not going to follow that previous advice or you have done so and you're ready to move on. So I want to show you my principle of communication video notes. And these are, again, linked on this video in case you need to see the actual thing. So this first part is just the notes that I took down while I was watching it. Okay? There's information there. It all looks pretty much the same. I don't really know where to stop for things or any of that, but I have information there. That's a thing. Those were my initial notes. But I told you I end up rewriting notes. So I did those. Then I came down to this and I made this version that's easier for me to find the stuff that I need. I have the title in nice big letters. Also notice I changed the size of the font. This is just what it defaulted to, size 11. That's harder for my old eyes to read. So I made it bigger because it's going to be easier for me to read. And then made the title nice and strong. Boom, I know I'm worrying about the principles of communication. Right away, I had a bunch of things on the top here. I wasn't certain what of these things mattered. None of them ended up actually mattering. So the focus of all this ended up being these 7 C's of effective communication. So I just cut out that extra step. Didn't need it, got rid of it. Since I know that this is important, I made it nice and big and bold. And I also wrote down there my little note, and I kept the note on what the 7 C's of effective communication are. Like, why did I write this thing down? Right? And that's because it's a checklist to make this stuff easier to understand. Great. Then, with those 7 C's, as here, I did write numbers down with them because I've been told a number. I was automatically thinking I should have these numbered. But there isn't anything to make what matters with what stand out well. So with those, to make it a little easier, first off, the actual C that we were dealing with, I underlined, makes it stand out a little bit more. But also, I went ahead and indented everything else under it. That way, I know, okay, all of this information ties into that number 1. I'm not getting confused between things. Okay. Also, the features that were given for them, I went ahead and took the word features and I put that in italics. That way I know, okay, here I'm looking for the features, and I use letters instead of numbers so I can identify. These are all the different features of it. Have those there. Okay. Went through that all the way through. Now, if there were more things than just the 7 C's here, I would maybe do some color coding for okay, the 7 C's might be this color and some other things, but this is a pretty simple video. So I didn't bother doing the color coding with this. As I scan through, you see all the things with that. You see that I misspelled, misinterpreted. Those are all set up the same all the way through, but I can very quickly find what I'm looking for. If I'm just curious about if I needed to remember the features of consideration, boom, I can do that. If I just need to know what they meant by creativity, I can go to that. This would be a good time to point out that I think it's really weird that they talk about these 7 C's of communication, and yet they have 9. But whatever. I still went ahead and wrote it down because that was what was going on here. Kind of a weird thing. But that's how I had my notes set up on here. It's very easy to scan through and find what I need. It's much easier than it was before. I mean, I had the information here, but this is going to take me a lot of time to look through to find the things that I want. This, I can just scan on down and I know right what to jump to. Much more simple to deal with. And again, I use these specific older school style of taking notes where you use Roman numerals, numbers, letters, and you go through that way with things that are important for your way of designating stuff to look for. That works for me. There are all kinds of other ways to take notes. Use those other options. That really is all I have to say about taking notes and highlighting things. Thank you for following along with the video. I hope it was helpful to you. I hope you have a good day. I hope you don't end up slamming your head into a wall with any classes or just general things you're wanting to research.